maybe we can get you over here being producers if you
Oh,
put in
yeah,
public
maybe, yeah.
access. And it's so good to see you
So,
alive
yeah.
and well and out of jail. And,
Thank you very much,
welcome,
Harold.
and welcome, Yeong-Ching, very
Thank
much.
you.
It's our pleasure to be here.
And welcome to you in the audience. A pleasure to welcome two practitioners of Falun Gong, which is a thing we're going to be, a movement that we're going to be talking about, a health movement and a spiritual movement perhaps that is very prominent in the country of China. And they've had an ordeal, particularly the man to my immediate left, that being Charles Lee. He can set us straight and tell a story, but he was imprisoned in China for something like 3 years under what were really horrific conditions. And he's also a practitioner. We're going to talk about this and other matters. And Charles, welcome very much.
Thank you very much.
And to my immediate left, or my far left, is Yeong-Ching Foo. She was fiancée with Charles when he was going through his travail, and they're now man and wife. And Yeong-Ching, welcome very, very much to Conversation.
Thank
you. Okay. Charles, maybe you could start. You were born in China. Let's have a little bit of your story in a summary way, and then we'd like a little bit of your background. But you were born in China,
yes.
And maybe you could take it from there.
Yeah, I was born in China in 1965 in the province beside Shanghai, which is called Jiangsu province. And then, at that time, just 1 year before the Cultural Revolution began, and after the primary school and then the college, and then I came to this country right after the Tiananmen Square crackdown. Actually, I came here like in '91.
Right after Tiananmen.
Yeah, a little bit after the Tiananmen Square crackdown, and I went to University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign to study neuroscience, and then in '95 I went to Mass General Hospital in Boston. It's affiliated to Harvard Medical School.
Yeah.
To do the study research over there, and then I passed the board exams over there.
So you're a medical doctor.
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
And in 1997, I got to know Falun Gong. So I started practice. I feel that this is a very strong and powerful meditation system which can improve my health and well-being and the mental balance to the great extent. So and I started practice ever since.
Okay, and we're going to come back to that. Okay,
yeah.
We're going to come back to you, and it's your story largely we're going to be building on because you were the one who was under the gun, as they say. But maybe you could share. You're Malaysian originally, and maybe you could share a little bit when you were born and raised and that sort of thing.
I'm born and raised in Malaysia, and then I came to the state to further my study.
What were you studying?
Computer science.
Okay,
And then I graduated and worked in California, and then there I met Charles.
Met in California.
Later.
Yeah, later.
Later, yes. I see. So you're cyber oriented in computers and so forth, and you're Malaysian background, and you've been married. Congratulations on
Thank you
having
very much.
such a wonderful gathering of male and female. and congratulations on the wedding.
Thank you again. Yeah.
And we'll be wanting you to come in and talk on this as well, because you were there supporting him when you were his fiancé, and he was under the pressure of the communist system in China. Go back to your beginning. You were there. If you could share with us a little bit of China. It's a huge part of the world scene and everything now. When you were a youngster and you were being educated in the school system in China, were you raised on Karl Marx and communism and the whole socialist notion? As I indicated to you, I saw Mr. Hu on television the other day talking to the Chinese party and the people, saying we represent socialism and Karl Marx, and we're representing the interests of the poor people and the masses, like Karl Marx said, against the imperialists and the capitalists and so forth. And I scratched my head trying to figure out how they can be saying that they represent socialism. But were you raised on Karl Marx as a young person and so forth in terms of the educational system you were submitted to? Or share with us a little bit
Actually,
what that's about.
I said I was born 1 year before the Cultural Revolution. The Communist Party in China, they have destroyed, almost everything from the Chinese traditional cultures and values. And what they did was like they have a big brainwash machine, all these state machines, medium, all these propaganda were controlled by them. So when we were young, we had to memorize all those Karl Marx things, or socialism or Mao Zedong thoughts, that kind of things. And we didn't have that kind of access to the, really the Chinese traditional culture.
Interesting, huh?
No, I mean, that's
a
interesting.
5,000-year-old culture,
yeah,
brother.
but they all disrupted. I mean, actually, we are going to show the clips of the Chinese culture and how the Communist Party destroyed that. So, we were kind of blank of, of this kind of values. So, if you, see a lot of Chinese youth, they come out of China, they don't know that much about the Chinese traditional culture at all.
Lao
So,
Tzu,
Lao Tzu, Confucius, and Buddhism, all these things.
5,000 years
it's
of
a
culture,
rich
culture,
rich
right?
history and
And
culture.
they wanted to erase that from the minds of the people in order to supplant. Help me out to understand in a large pattern. They wanted to establish, in a certain sense, Marxism or socialism as a quasi-religion by which you get a sense of identity and understand the human condition and so forth?
Yeah, that is very important for them because the communism declares themselves as like atheism. They don't believe any gods or high living beings. But if you look at the traditional culture and the values, they all believe in this gods and Buddhas, that kind of things. So if they let the traditional culture exist, then they're going to have problems. So they intentionally to wipe all this out and let the Chinese people to be brainwashed. The majority of people in China, they don't believe in God, so that's why they can be manipulated by the Communist Party.
Yeah, it's dialectical materialism is the religion. I think Karl Marx said that religion is the opium of the people. It's just a way to put put things over, and what really matters is the economic relationship between the classes, and that the communists will stand for the masses, the interests of the masses of the people.
That's what they say.
The capitalists. That was what Marxism was about, and still is in the minds of many people. Many people who look at the system, let's say, even though it's anything like what you have in China, I understand, but you still have just a group of people running the establishment here. Many people who are in opposition to the way things are being done, let's say here or in the world. And they will say they still repair to Karl Marx and the socialist idea that the state should take care of the masses because the vested interests who run everything and own everything don't have an interest in what the interests of the people themselves. Whereas if you had a socialist system, something like Europe is developing a little bit more of, it will better serve the interests of the masses of the people. And the Chinese are trying to assume that mantle for what they're doing in China.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of a big lie, put forth by the Communist Party. Even though they declare they represent the interests of the majority of the masses, actually they have a collectionism. They collect all these wealth and resources from all people, everybody, and then they control them to their own ends. Right now, if you go to China, you will find out the richest people in China are those Communist Party officials.
Well,
and the ordinary people in China, they have nothing, virtually nothing. They are slaves.
That's what it's.
So
you use the word slave.
It is. They are slaves because they don't have access to all these resources, and all the resources are controlled by the Communist officials and the Communist Party itself.
The communists, who in the tradition of Karl Marx are supposed to be making a revolution against the imperialists or the capitalists, have become capitalists.
Right now,
they are the ones who now have all the power.
See, that is,
it's a little hard to understand in a certain way.
Yeah, this is a very interesting phenomenon of the Communist Party, how they evolved. In the very beginning, they say they represent the majority of the masses, and then they have this kind of like a kind of slogan to make people like involved in their movement, and then people were cheated and then follow them. Then they overthrow the nationalist government. And then after they Kuomintang,
and push them to Taiwan.
Yeah, that's right.
And that would be anything bourgeois or anything intellectual.
Yeah, anybody intellectual, anybody who has like wealth, they just kill them or throw them away.
Well, I think the Marxists said you would have to make a revolution against the forces that had owned everything before, and those forces are powerful and internationally connected, and you're going to have to guard against a counter-revolution that's going to overthrow the real revolutions that's serving the people. That was one of the arguments of the communist system in Russia, it seems to me.
Yeah, that's right.
And also in
Lenin,
China.
Lenin, they use violence and lies all the time. So when they put these communist theories out, a lot of people, they were like very excited because this looks like a
something for the people.
Yeah, something for the people, for the society. But actually, in reality, what they did was they control all the power and then use people as their tools. Then use people and then overthrow the government, and then they control the power, and they in China immediately after they took power, they gave the lands to the farmers. After like 1.5 years, they took them back.
Is that right? You had land reform for the peasants.
Yeah, and then they immediately took them back.
I had done programs, if I may, and forgive us going a little China. It's important for us to understand what's going on in China because so much is going on. Iris Chang, I don't know if you're familiar with Iris Chang.
The rape of Nanjing.
The rape of Nanjing or Nanking, and also the Chinese in America. Very interesting book. And that they've been very badly treated, that kind of, and they were badly treated, the masses in China.
By the Japanese invader,
by the Japanese, but also by the Chinese rulers of emperors that have been in place before. And one of our great poets, James Joyce, said, history is a nightmare from which I'm attempting to awaken. And it's not been good for the peasant people, whether it was the emperors of Rome or the kings of England or the emperors of China. It hasn't been a good situation for the serfs or the peasants of the world. Most anywhere in the world, it seems to me. And so people long for the idea that we may have a system that is really going to be just and involving the masses of the people in a just and fair deal. And the communists can build on that dream.
Yeah, that is one facet of the communist history, because if you look at the Chinese history, China has been, China was invaded by a lot of countries, Russia, Japan.
Opium War by the British.
By British, France, you name it.
The imperialists.
Yeah, imperialism. And then, because of this. Yeah, it is true, but because of these kind of disasters, set upon China, so a lot of people in China were looking for the real medicine for China. Yeah. They look for a lot of things, and then finally the violence got on the top of it. The communism is the real violence to overthrow all the old systems. So nobody, along with it is like a new theory about the against the traditional values and everything. So the violence take the top priority in people's life because they want to overthrow the old system and then get the communist system in place.
They would claim in the name of Marx they made a real revolution, say, set in 1917 in Russia, and that was the proletariat. Yeah. And they had to protect themselves against counter-revolutionary forces that were going to come. A dictatorship of the proletariat was necessary in order to stave off the reaction from the old forces that had control, had been overcome by the forces of good. They were going to have to guard against that coming. Is that part of the pattern you were raised with in terms of your ideology and a Maoist?
That is right, because when we were young, we were indoctrinated a lot of violent theories about killing those so-called counter-revolutionists and all those the capitalists, that kind of landlords,
capitalist imperialists.
Yeah, imperialism, landlords, all those so-called bad people, they should be killed,
Well, a lot of people, if I may, a lot of the people in the third world, let's say, or other than Europe, Europe after Pizarro or after Columbus, colonized the world. Yeah. And there was an anti-colonization sentiment that came out to say after the Second World War that they had been under the boot of the colonization of Europe. Yeah. And that's something that people should be more aware of. A lot of people, opium wars and things that were done by European forces that were powerful and able to oppose themselves, and Algiers and all of this, that's all part of the context of history out of which these things came.
That is true, Harold, because the colonization is sort of tragedy for a lot of people in the world.
Yes.
But what is more unfortunate is that because of these things, the communists get this way and got hold of the power in China. But if there was no this kind of things, that communism could have no way to get hold of the power. So the communism is much worse than the colonization or invader. Actually, the Japanese invasion, because if you look,
pretty bad. The Japanese
it is very bad. But the communist ruling is much worse, much worse, because after the Communist Party took power in China, there were about 80 million people tortured to death, starved to death, or shot to death by the communists.
That's an awful
In
lot.
50 years.
Yeah, in
Yeah,
50
this
years.
is
Terrible.
much more than what Japanese invader killed.
They
And-
usually put about 30 million at the feet of Stalin
Yeah.
in his collectivization in Russia.
Yeah, another thing
And,
actually.
and that was not really a communism, it was more like a state capitalism.
Yeah, state capitalism. Actually, they call that fascist state capitalism.
Fascist state
Fascist
capitalism in
state-
Russia?
Yeah,
Same in China?
China, yeah.
You would call it that. That's the way
Yeah,
you would see it.
yeah.
So the invoking of the beautiful dreams for the masses that the communists evoke in China is a
Smoke screen. actually.
smoke screen
Yeah, just,
for what
you know,
is
the-
reality.
Yeah.
And they used to have objection to the imperialists,
Mhm.
and now they've become running dog people
Themselves, yeah.
who associate with the and have become that themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
It's been co-opted.
Yeah.
The mass
See, the
benefit. It's not benefiting the masses.
yeah, this kind of a strange historical cycle. When they took the power, they took all these factories, firms, and lands from the capitalism and
The
from
imperialists.
farmers, imperials, whatever.
Yeah.
And then right now, they have controlled these kind of wealth for a long time. And then during the last 20 years or so, they privatized those things. And then who got them?
Then they got the private ownership.
Themselves. Yeah,
For themselves.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Lord Acton said power tends to corrupt.
Absolute
Absolute power corrupts
Corrupts
absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah, that's
and
right,
it seems
yeah.
to be it happens in that case.
in
yeah.
China. So the corruption in China is so widespread. It's just horrifying.
Uh-huh.
You cannot imagine how much money those communist officials have got, and then how poor the ordinary people are.
Yeah, and I heard, and you can pipe in too, Yeong-Ching, but I mean, I've heard that there's something on the, despite the police state capability, you were seized, and we're going to talk about the fact you were arrested,
Yeah.
put in a prison for 3 years
Yeah.
for doing some meditative practice. We're going to get to the details of
Yeah.
that, but they had that kind of power. Despite that, there's something on the order of, maybe we don't hear it much because we're in league with the people that are running China. We're in league. We got huge trade deficit, and we're
Yeah, yeah.
trading, and we're trillions of dollars of imperialistic capitalist money invested in that country and all that sort of thing. But we're hearing that there's something like 80,000 serious, widespread demonstrations by
Every
the
year.
people of
Yeah,
China
yeah, yeah.
against the system in place. Does that make sense to you as you understand it, Young? Maybe she could talk a little to this too. I'm sorry, it's so interesting.
No,
We
it's
can talk
okay.
too
You
much.
guys continue first.
But-
It's time for me, I will.
You
when
would just pipe in.
I'll just pipe in.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but for these 80,000
demonstration.
demonstrations, whatever, that's like all small scale because people in China, they had no way to live.
Yeah.
Their lands were like confiscated, and then the compensation is very little, and they're off the jobs, and all these kind of things. So much of unfairness going on in China. So those people had no way to live. Then they just had a demonstration, that kind of things. But they're all very small scale, and the Communist Party has all these kind of armed, police. Manpower to control all these things.
Raw power.
Raw power.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
just a while ago, we heard another a Dongzhou in Canton. They sent the armed force to to shoot those peasants and farmers one more time. Actually, that happened like in 2005.
But there has been some considerable amount of people trying to demonstrate against it and so on.
But
And I think it's because of that that you, as a Falun Gong practitioner, was seen, or the Falun Gong movement, which I understand you may have something like 100 million
Yeah.
people in China have ascribed to it, and they see that as a threat to their power base.
yeah, that's right. Because actually the Falun Gong was made public in 1992. It's about a meditation system. We have like 5 sets of movements, exercise actually.
Where they exercise in the park or something.
Yeah, exercise in the park, meditation, that kind of things. But we also have another so-called cultivation. We follow the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance.
Wait a minute. Truthfulness?
Compassion,
Compassion?
and forbearance.
That's very subversive.
Well, I mean,
No, I'm kidding. That truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance
Yeah,
are
it's
all
very-
things that our great sages throughout all the ages have told us we should
It's good
strive
for
to.
human
Yeah.
society. It's good for human beings. It's good for everybody actually.
Mhm.
But because exactly it's a very powerful system, a lot of people they got very much healthier before before they practice it.
Well, you had this thing of Qigong, right?
Yeah,
and that
Qigong-
goes back thousands of years.
Yeah, Qigong actually goes back
Qi.
thousands. Yeah, Qi.
It's energy.
Yeah, energy. But the thing is, in like 7 years, you know, they were like the practice attracted like about 100 million people in
That's
China.
a lot of people. We're only 300 million in this whole country.
Yeah, that's right. So that is why, you know, because in the beginning the communist regime supported it, not because of they like the truthfulness, compassion, forbearance, because people practice that, you know, they become healthier. You know, they don't use that much medical resource.
Okay,
so
they
the
use
regime like it, but
as a health measure.
Exactly.
Because there's a great deal of
so
good health that comes from
money,
that. Yeah.
They save a lot of money, but later on they saw so many people practice it, then they afraid of losing control. So they have some kind of, you know, plan in the underground to wipe out the Falun Gong practitioners.
Is it because there were so many people ascribing to something other than
That-
Karl Marx and the
that
communist
is-
idea? It's
yeah.
like an ideology or a quasi-religion, this Karl Marx.
Well, I mean,
Or their story
it's-
is like a
it's
narrative that's almost quasi-religious.
it is a way of life.
Yeah,
Most
and a way of seeing all of human history.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you know, the existence of Falun Gong is like a mirror. You know, it reflects how ugly, how violent, how evil actually the Communist Party has been. You know, because they have been using violence and lies all the time to control the society to get the benefits for themselves. So the Falun Gong practitioners, there is not a single practitioner who is like a corrupted officials and that kind of things.
Not even one?
No.
No?
Everybody is very self-disciplined.
Help
you
me
know.
out here. Isn't there a fellow that used to be here in Queens somewhere that was one of the persons who was a leader of Falun Gong? He used to live out in Queens,
yeah,
or maybe
he
still
used to
does.
live in Queens.
And do you have a person like the Unification Church with Reverend Moon, or the communists will call it a cult? They will say it's a cult, like Jim Jones or something like that.
I mean, you see, the thing is,
And
if
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know, but
And is there a person associated with Falun Gong in the modern experience in the world, like Maharashtra Yoga was?
We have our teacher, you know, Mr. Lee Yeong-Ching, but
Now, who is that?
Mr. Lee Yeong-Ching.
Yeah, could you say who he is or explain?
You know, he is our teacher, and he teaches the, you know, the practice itself.
For the whole of the Falun Gong movement worldwide?
Yeah. I mean, that, you know, all these, you know, we
Okay.
all learn from Mr. Lee about, you know, all these principles.
He's
you know.
living now?
He's living.
Where does he live?
In the United States.
In Queens?
Maybe not in Queens. But
Maybe not in Queens,
In
but
New
in
York. Yeah, in New York somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Okay.
the thing
That's
is,
good.
the thing is, if you look at the, you know, the term cult, they have some characters of a cult.
Yeah, that's what people will try
Yeah,
and
the
say.
thing is, you know, if you
like
get
Scientology or something.
I don't want to name anything, but
Yeah, okay.
the characters of the cult is like, if you get in, you cannot get out. Right, and also you have to like kowtow to a certain person.
Yeah.
Like the absolute power, you cannot betray or you cannot leave. And also another character of the cult is that you don't have that much contact with the outside world.
Yeah.
So you were like doctrinated all the time.
Right.
So, but we are much different because we are free to come and go, and also every practitioner is a part of the society. We have a job, we have a family, we have, you know, everything like everybody else.
Right.
So it's like, you know, you have your own way to get information. Nobody's controlling you. Like you can only do this and that. You cannot, you know, things like that. So it's much different. The main thing about Falun Gong is to be a good person, to be to improve your own well-being. So that's totally different.
Before we start, Qigong is an ancient thing.
Yeah, Qigong
and Qigong was a healing practice in China, and they've got, like they have in the Vedic, in the India, in the Hindu tradition, they have the idea of prana.
Yeah.
And in Chinese philosophy, they have the idea of qi.
Yeah, qi, yin yang, you know, 5 elements, that kind of things.
Yes.
So they actually with each other in a harmonious state.
Right.
So.
And there's a lot of truth. If you have a harmonious state like that, it's very good for your health, is it not?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Improve your immunization too. Like during the SARS.
Yeah.
Many people talk about the meditation is good. It increase your immunization,
yes,
so you will be immune from SARS when they can't find any cure for SARS at that time.
But that did help.
Yeah,
and
for those practitioners.
Those ancient Chinese systems, or you could call it, you're a medical doctor, and they used to say acupuncture, acupressure, all that Chinese or Eastern medicine is,
all these energy
is not the medical model that the West follows.
No.
And but there's a great deal of wisdom and good healing
yeah.
that is part of that ancient 5,000-year-old
That's
culture.
right. See, what I can say is if you do the meditation, like we have this, we try to follow these 3 principles: truthfulness, compassion, forbearance, and to be a better person, we get rid of the bad thoughts from our mind, all those bad things, interference from our mind. So when we do meditation, our mind will be like clear.
Yes.
And then your mind and body will be in a harmonious state at that time.
Then
so
that helps your health.
Yes,
yeah.
of course. Then all this energy circulation will be positive in a harmonious way, and then all those like a disease, that kind of things will be cleansed out.
And you're totally nonviolent.
Yeah, that's right.
There's you're not thinking
that
about
is one thing, because
violence.
the persecution.
Right. That's important. Yeah.
The persecution on Falun Gong has been going on for like more than 8 years.
8 years only?
More than 8 years.
More
the persecution,
than.
yeah. And
it was allowed or not
allowed before.
Before.
But what I'm trying to say is that for these 8.5 years, not a single Falun Gong practitioner used violence to protect himself.
And you are a practitioner as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
How
long have you been a practitioner?
I started practicing in year 1994, 3 years earlier than he.
You got him to it?
No,
No, you didn't. She didn't get you to follow.
No, somebody else. I got that in Boston.
I got it in California.
And you come off with a medical tradition, so you got the Western medicine, and you got a good deal of the core of Chinese Eastern medicine as well.
Yeah, that's right.
You're a very important medical person. Huh? Yeah, and
thank you,
and you're practicing that, and then you were give this story because that's what brought us together and everything. You were actually arrested.
Yeah,
you were in China.
Yeah, that is.
And you were returned to. Tell your story a little bit as far as that.
Yeah, because I mentioned that the Communist Party has a big brainwashing machine in China. It controls all the medium, newspapers, radio, television, you name it. And then when they started persecuting Falun Gong, they made a lot of lies about Falun Gong. Say like if a practitioner practice Falun Gong, they would kill themselves or kill other people. They go crazy. That kind of things.
Kind of thing like they assume with other cults.
Exactly.
Like Jim Jones. Remember the guy who did all the suicide down in Guyana?
They compare those the cults to Falun Gong. So Falun Gong did the same thing.
Right.
So they had reasons to persecute, to wipe out all these Falun Gong practitioners.
It was also a potential political threat to their power.
Well, they did not say. They did not
say
that. They did not say that time. In the beginning, they said it's like crazy people killing themselves or killing other people. But later on, after a couple, several years, they say Falun Gong is like anti-China force, running dog of those kind of things. But that's later on. But in the beginning, they did not say that. They said only like Falun Gong practitioners go crazy after they practice, because
you don't seem crazy at all.
Well, not at all.
All this is being made up.
Made
up.
That's a lie. Is what they tell to the Chinese people.
Goebbels said, if you're going to lie, lie big.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then tell the world. Everybody say like Falun Gong is cult or something like that. But anyways, and especially this one case in 2001, January 23rd, there was 7 so-called Falun Gong practitioners set fire on themselves in Tiananmen Square,
In what year?
2001.
2001.
Yeah,
2 years after the
January 23rd.
Okay.
So then they say like that incite a lot of hatred among Chinese people towards Falun Gong, because you see Falun Gong people do this and that, so that they have more excuses to persecute Falun Gong. So that is one of the reasons I went back to China. I want to let people know in China that that's not true. Because if you look, the United Nations had a kind of tape release that saying that that's made up, staged by the government. Actually, those people were not Falun Gong practitioners, and they
So that incident wasn't even Falun Gong. It was
no, it's not. No. They use those people
they use
pretend
children,
to be like Falun Gong practitioners.
They use what I'm saying.
They use children to get your compassion, like hate Falun Gong. They use children in that self-immolation.
And they staged it?
Yeah, they staged it. Yeah.
They use mothers. They use all these things to.
That would be what might be called a false flag thing. I mean, like
the Hitler had this kind of fire on the Congress building.
I'm sorry, I don't
Hitler
know.
before the World War II, Hitler like
Hitler. The Reichstag.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
then
they were
had
involved apparently in burning the Reichstag
Yeah,
in 33.
that's like same trick. They just mix this kind of up, and then they just persecute Falun Gong. So I went back to let people know.
It's good for them to have a scapegoat, maybe. You know the concept of scapegoat.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they did. The Nazis did that with the Jews.
Yeah.
In Germany.
Yeah.
Right?
They have to have
just
this.
Just a thought that occurred to me.
But anyways, I went back to let people know it's not true. I brought some videotapes, that kind of things, show people what's really going on.
Had you been back before, or had you?
I did, but I was actually detained once in 2002, and I.
Oh, you'd gone on other occasions.
Yeah, and then I went back again. But in the first time I was detained, I escaped. I managed to escape that time, but when I went back again, they got me again. So
okay.
So that was some kind of unfortunate.
When you went back, did you realize that you had escaped from a jail or
from
a
detention center?
From a detention center, and you'd been arrested. And arrest means the same thing as you do here. You have a record. They have a record of you and all that.
They did not have a real record in the. Beginning, but I believe they find out later on who I was.
Did they print you, fingerprint you, and all that sort of thing? They say here, put you through the system.
Not at that time, because when I was detained in the first time, they just held me for like several hours. And
I see.
I got away. I escaped,
Okay.
So.
And then when you went back, did you realize you might be subject to that from
I
that thing,
that,
and then also from what you were intending to do in terms of education?
Every time when I went back, I had this kind of caution, say like I might be in danger or something like that. But I still went back because it's so important to let people know the truth.
And to let the people know the truth about the Falun Gong.
Exactly, about the persecution as well.
So you become a really believing member of the Falun Gong philosophy.
Yeah, actually, yes.
Okay, fair enough. People have that kind of a thing. People have all kinds of thoughts and that. But then what happened? They arrested you? And if I'm right, help me out, you were put in prison?
Yeah.
And you were a United States citizen.
Yeah, I was already an American citizen at that time, and they arrested me. They made up something. They said I was intending to destroy the radio and TV facilities because I was trying to, broadcast those kind of, videotapes about the persecution.
You had a bomb or something?
No, not a bomb.
Did you have a big tank?
No.
You didn't have a tank?
Not a tank.
You didn't have an artillery piece or something?
No, just some kind of equipment to broadcast, to air those kind of.
A megaphone or something?
No, DVD, VCD players.
Oh.
And so I can insert the information into the TV system, but what they did was like they knew that was not right to put me in that kind of crime. So they did not allow me to present my evidence, and then they did not allow me to defend myself.
Do you have anything like habeas corpus in China, or any of those things like constitutional guarantees against false arrest and that? What is it? Do they just have star chamber? Do they just have a thing where they arrest you and they don't say anything, and nobody hears from you, and they throw away the key? Or are there lawyers? Did you have access to a lawyer? What some of these things that we tend to think
there's
of?
a lot of interesting things.
But first of
let
all,
her talk by all means.
Yeah.
First of all, before they try to get him to sentence him, then later on I found out he wrote a letter sent out later. Then in the letter he said they were trying to make him not becoming a U.S. citizen, so that they can persecute him. So that it's easier, much easier that they can persecute him if he's a Chinese citizen.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, right. You're right. But as you're an American citizen, you would have a.
But that was a very funny story because.
And then when I call the U.S. I didn't realize that he was I talked to them, and he was not being. Actually, it was very long time for me to record this back, that he is being beaten. That I didn't.
Beaten.
He was
tortured.
Tortured, and other stuff.
In the prison.
And then
and you were.
And then I found out that through the they told the reporters that he was being very nicely
You mean that she was trying to say
in San Francisco?
The communist government saying that I was very well at that time, but actually was beaten inside, tortured inside.
And you were in prison for 3 years?
Yeah.
At the very beginning.
Yeah. From the beginning of when you were picked up. There are a lot of people. Mr. Lantos, I think, was a congressman. Lantos, and there were others. And then they got a committee going here to free Charles Lee and that sort of thing.
Yeah, actually,
and there was a lot of agitation here and so forth.
Yeah.
One of the problems with television is we got time, but we don't have endless time.
Yeah,
we don't have enough time, right? And we want to make sure we get in. You brought in a clip, a video clip.
Yeah, let's look at the clip.
Maybe this would be a good time. Maybe you could, as they say, set it up. What the video clip is going to show. We have 2. Let's try and get those in.
Yeah, let's try to get number 1.
Because it's so darned interesting. You know, you understand what I mean? But maybe if you could, George, and that in the studio, we got the first clip. Maybe you could tell us a little bit what the clip is going to be. A couple minutes.
The first, the clip is about the persecution of Falun Gong by the Communist Party, and then all this, kind of horrifying,
okay,
thing.
well, we've been talking about that.
And then so far there are more than 3,100 people tortured to death. That's what we know.
Tortured to death.
Death, killed. That's what we know. Their names and their address and how they were tortured to death. But what we don't know is much more.
Okay. Well, let's run it up.
Run it up. Yeah.
Let's send that tape now, and if you could pipe the sound in here, we'd appreciate hearing it into the studio. Okay, run the tape now, then, please. Thank you. We're talking with Charles Lee.
Persecution of Falun Gong, a worldwide campaign by China. The extreme persecution of Falun Gong practitioners in China is well documented. It's simply inconceivable to us that any government would systematically brutalize, torture, and murder its own citizens for exercising their most basic human rights. But China has been doing exactly that to Falun Gong practitioners for over 2 years.
Chinese government. Tang Yongji says he was severely burned by Chinese police because he refused to give up his beliefs in Falun Gong. After being left to die, he escaped to Hong Kong and hid inside a fruit crate on his way to California.
Would the Chinese government dare to export its campaign of hatred and suppression to the United States? The answer is yes. Under a directive given by China's President Jiang Zemin to, quote, intensify the struggle overseas, end quote, the Chinese government has been systematically attempting to wipe out Falun Gong right here in America. This is no idle threat. The Chinese government has directly taken part in interfering with the proceedings of local and state governments, as well as our national government. In the United States Congress, House Concurrent Resolution 218 urges China to stop the persecution of Falun Gong in mainland China. What about the Chinese government's efforts to impose its will on Falun Gong practitioners right here in the United States? Can a foreign government, a communist regime, dictate the behavior of American politicians? The answer again is yes. We call on all people with compassion and justice in their hearts to help us stop this injustice. What follows are just a few of the alarming cases of interference by the Chinese government in United States domestic affairs.
Wow, that's really something. That's a thing. Yeah, okay, yeah. It's coming here.
It says that it's coming here into actually all over the world. The Communist Party, they have their influence, in United States, Canada, Europe, any way you can name. Actually, they beaten one of the practitioners in this country, severely beaten in the Mr. Lee Yeong-Ching in Atlanta. Another instance happened in Africa. They sent some kind of killer to shoot on Falun Gong practitioners. So I was American citizen. I was arrested.
Yeah, you were an American citizen. And didn't you have a poster? Maybe we can hold it up. We're gonna, let me hold that up. That's something we'll get this in. This is a poster. I'll hold it like this, and maybe you can come in on this camera.
Yeah.
They spelled your name differently, but yeah, this is a thing where there was a lot of support. And you, young Lee Yeong-Ching, were supporting him. He
called
was
for his
fiancé,
rescue
yeah.
for 3 years.
It must have been very disheartening to have him in prison.
It is very difficult because at that time I have to make sure that he's not being
tortured
to death.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And then I have to keep going on. and I have to keep thinking, what should I do?
Uh-huh.
So the only way I think to do is to keep exposing him.
Yeah.
Expose what they
And
did to
finding
him.
allies in
Yeah.
support of Charles Lee. Yeah.
Yeah.
It became a widespread movement, I guess.
It is, yeah, there are a lot of, actually around the world, not just this country. Like in South Korea, they collected like more than 50,000 signatures
That's
alone
good, yeah, yeah,
in
yeah.
that country.
Yeah.
When I travel, we have a van tour to rescue Dr. Charles Lee. And then by the time we travel from San Francisco all the way to Washington, D.C., and then I call the U.S. consulate, I always had contact with the U.S. consulate who go and visit Charles Lee. And at that time, I asked, how is his situation? I know before that was really bad.
Yeah.
And he said it's much better.
Okay.
And what they had told him in prison, the prison guard said, your fiancé give us
A lot of pressure.
a lot
All
of
right.
pressure.
Good for you. Keep the
Yeah,
pressure
yeah.
up and so
So
forth.
I was-
And how bad was it, Charles? Spell it out a little bit.
I mean, I was, for the 3 years, I was watched 24 hours a day for 3 years. They had like sandwich technique, like they had like bulky real criminals in front of me and on my back, give me like this space. Whenever I went, whatever I did, they would always surround me, give me very little space. It's kind of suffocating experience. And they even when I was...
Those are other prisoners, you mean?
Yeah, other real criminals.
It wasn't you were just crowded, a lot of people, or?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many people in the prison. Like,
They have a lot of people in prison.
a lot of
yeah.
lot of like
A lot of political
they're like political dissidents and real like
And real
drug
criminals,
traffickers
yeah,
and real criminals. There are like 3,000 prisoners in that Nanjing prison alone.
And the one you were in.
Yeah.
For the whole while, the same prison.
Yeah.
Did you have any access to a consular officer? Did you call the
I
U.S.
did- I
or
did
is
have-
there an office there, or what's the situation
They
for a
visit-
U.S.
they
citizen
v-
being submitted
Yeah,
to that?
they visit me
for
like
instance?
regularly, like. But even though they
Once
visit me
every-
like every month, they
every
visit me,
month.
but they still try a lot of things to torture me. Like I was watched all the time, and also they forced me to watch those like anti-Falun Gong programs, videotapes.
Oh, you had to watch videotape?
They
They
forced me.
Did they
forced
tape
me.
your eyes open
Yes.
so that you couldn't? You had to do it
Yeah,
like
that's
out of
right,
Clockwork
They make him
Orange?
sit on a
Yeah.
small
When
tube, right?
I like refused to watch, they would like beat me up.
Really?
And they would have
Beat
people
you up
like
physically?
Yeah, physically. They would have people holding my arms, like holding my head, so I could not like watch elsewhere. Like the TVs over there, I had to watch this, and if I close my eyes, they would like poke my eyes, like open up, something like that. And they also have some kind of condemnation sessions. It's invented by the Communist Party. They have the victims in the middle, and then a lot of people surround this guy, and they shout at him, say like, "You're a bad guy. You're like snake. You are nothing. You're scum." That kind of thing. It's just trying to make your self dignity like go away.
So physical and psychological
yeah, psychological
torture.
always.
They forced the tux on him.
Yeah.
The tux, the prisoners.
Yeah.
Then if the prisoner is compassion to him, his situation, they will bring him away and bring another one who is worse. Always like the drug addict.
They
and
wouldn't let
others.
you develop any camaraderie. with
Exactly,
others.
exactly. Anytime that because those prisoners were watched by other
Yeah, right.
people as they were.
It's
So
like police state. Yeah.
yeah. So if the guy who is close to me develops some kind of sympathy, he'll be replaced right away. So that is they keep.
And there weren't other Falun Gong practitioners.
Not
that
in
you
my
could-
case. Not in
No.
my case. I was like alone all the time. I was
Uh-huh.
surrounded by all these people giving me all the pressure all the time, and they forced me to do a lot of things like sit in a very little stool like this high, and with my back straight. If I could not sit straight, they would kick me, push me. That kind of things.
For a long time,
Horrible.
for 48
Long time.
The
yeah.
longest time
Sleep
was
deprivation, did they do?
yeah, they did that as well.
Uh-huh.
I mean, in the beginning, I was deprived of sleep for 92 hours.
Wow. Okay. yeah,
Continuously.
Yeah.
And then the longest time for which I was forced to sit was 48 days continuous. Every day I was forced to sit in the little stool. Like after 2 weeks, my butt
Yeah,
hurt
yeah,
so much.
yeah,
I couldn't.
yeah, yeah.
And also another thing is, when they forced you to do that, they did not allow you to talk to anybody. They did not allow you to read, to watch TV, nothing. Just sit there, So after a couple of weeks, my mind became
Yeah.
blocked.
Oh, yeah,
It's so
absolutely.
difficult
Sure.
to think.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That's kind of mental torture.
Yeah.
You know, if you
Yeah.
haven't gone through that, you cannot imagine how tough that is, how torturing that is. You cannot think anymore who you are. You know, I was trying to like remembering my friends' names. I couldn't do it. And then because and in the meantime, they're just still trying to force me to accept their, you know, force me to give up my faith in Falun Gong, force me to accept the unlawful verdict.
Sounds like the persecution of the Christians under the Romans.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I don't know, or something along those lines,
Yeah.
and everything like that. And
Then-
yet the movement still grows. The Falun Gong movement grows.
Yeah, that's, you know, continuous growth. You know, and
He was being force-fed with the tube.
Yeah.
Force-fed?
This
They
tube.
force-fed you?
yeah,
That's very, very
yeah.
difficult.
They use
yeah.
like a very thick tube to forcefully, you know, put in my nose.
Is that because you had refused to eat? Did you try a hunger strike?
Yeah, I
thing or
did a
something?
hunger strike. Yeah, but they use that to as a way to torture you. Actually, you know, after they forcefully put the tube in, which is very painful, they did not give me that much food, just little. You know, and then they had some kind of, you know, propaganda saying that, you know, we have like humanity, we are like, you know, very, you know, out of humanity, you know, we force-fed just something like that. Actually, they did not give me, you know, they give me a very little like milk powder. After that, I was still very hungry, but they used that, you know.
And
so
you were telling them all along you were an American citizen, and the
Yeah.
consular office couldn't do anything or anything, and
not too
finally they
much.
got some support here, or what was it that led to your release, do you think?
Actually, you know, that's kind of funny story because, you know, first of all, I was lucky because of this consular visiting and also the support from this country, and also as well myself is very firm. And
The what of yourself? The
myself
spirit.
was very firm. You know,
Yeah, you're a
very
strong character.
Yeah, very
of
strong.
character,
Anyways,
yeah.
I never.
Yeah, that's plain to see. Yeah.
Yeah, I never give up. So, because of these factors, I was not tortured to death. You know, otherwise I would be dead already.
If you had given up yourself, your
yeah,
own spirit.
yeah, or you know.
Could you in your own way practice Falun Gong
They-
while you were there, or is there?
I couldn't because they watched me all the time. Whenever I was
Really?
trying to practice, they would jump on me, holding my
And the
arms, legs.
practicing involves taking certain meditation.
Yeah, certain
positions
movements
and
like
things.
these positions.
So
that
if you
kind of
just
thing.
go like this,
They're
would
gonna
try
jump on, you know.
Oh my Lord! Isn't
All the
that
time,
something?
you
Isn't that it'd make a heck of a movie,
Oh,
wouldn't
yeah.
it?
They
Who would play
actually-
you? You maybe.
Maybe
yeah.
myself. Yeah.
One of the problems again is the time. We got another clip. That was very interesting.
How much
And
time we have?
We got about 10 minutes only left. See, so
Oh,
we got to
that's too
get
bad.
it in.
And
Yeah.
another very torturing
Yeah.
stuff is that they drag him through a flight of stairs
Uh-huh.
and then bruises all over to force him to the brainwashing classes.
Wow.
And then the tube was in here, and it was it was in for 33 hours.
Wow.
And the young man was trying to videotape so that they can do something make more propaganda,
Uh-huh.
but he didn't allow them. And then the young man just fainted because the whole scene was so
Oh, awful.
horrible.
So
Really?
awful, you know.
So
why-
Really?
awful.
Yeah.
Well,
And then
yeah.
all this thing, and then when I was outside, I was like, oh my God, every time it's like, your heart is just jumping,
Yes,
and
of
then
course,
you have to
of
like
course. Of course.
keep calling for help.
Yes, and good for you. You kept it up. It must
Yeah.
have been very hard. You
Anyways.
weren't able to get to China, or you've not been to China, or
No.
I
They
visited
were
the
not.
congressperson, and one of the wives said, don't go back. If you go back there, you can't really help much.
Yeah.
You have to stay outside.
yeah, right,
Anyways,
and bring it from outside.
Because we don't have that much time, you know. I want to add a little bit things in
Now, do we want to show the film clip?
just a while. I have another 30 seconds or something.
Okay, 30
'Cause I
seconds. Then we
have-
show the clip,
yeah.
right? And then
this
okay,
one, this is what I was forced to
this
make.
is what you were forced to make.
Yeah, this is like the homosexual slippers.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
a lot of goods from China are so cheap.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
they use slave labor.
Slave
all
labor?
the time.
And they're harvesting organs.
Yeah,
Apparently,
yeah,
they
yeah,
seem to be.
They
Other
harvest-
sources are showing
Yeah.
that they're doing that. You need a kidney, order one.
Yeah,
and they will bring the person.
They have
yeah.
a huge pool of Falun Gong
That's pretty
practitioners,
staggering, yeah.
live, Falun Gong practitioners. Whenever they have that data, they can match the
It seems to.
recipients.
And the 9 commentaries is saying that the government is so corrupt, or
Yeah.
so internally contradictions to the interests of the people,
Yeah.
that government's going to fall.
Of course, you will.
Now, you think they will? You really
Yes,
do?
yes,
Well,
because
then
they are
you
right now they are like more than 30 million Chinese quit the Communist
And how many
Communist
people
Party.
belong to Chinese Communist?
Actually, they're like 60 to 70 million. Right now, 30 million. Not all Chinese.
30 million? Half?
30 million, not half, because
No.
what I'm trying to say is like they quit the Communist Party and the affiliated organizations. not like usually.
That must be hard for somebody. That'd be like quitting the consul and foreign relations or the Senate of the United States or something.
Yeah, that's
for somebody to quit there, or any local official that's in the system here.
Yeah, of course, there are a lot of those people as well.
Because we have a power structure here. It's more subtle than that, and a little bit more nuanced.
More balanced.
But we still have the same kind of a power group here that a lot of people here are against. And a lot of the people who are against the system here are people who believe in Karl Marx. It's hard to understand and everything. But anyway, should we get the clip in?
Let's look at the clip.
Okay, we got another clip. And it's really good. The other one was very good. And let's show that. Now we're talking with Charles Lee and his lovely new wife, Miss Foo. And would you show that clip now? We got just time to get it in. So if you could run that.
No sound.
More sophisticated and systematic. Mao Zedong once said, fittingly, that he follows neither the Tao nor heaven. The Chinese culture, traditionally believed to be passed down by God, can be retold with the myths and legends of Chinese history. They include Pangu's creation of heaven and the earth, Nuwa's creation of humanity, Shenong's identification of hundreds of medicinal herbs, and Songji's invention of Chinese characters. The Taoist wisdom of unity of heaven and humanity has thus coursed through the veins of Chinese culture. Emperor Wang, who is thought of as the founder of Chinese culture, was also credited with founding Taoism. Confucius said, "Great learning promotes the cultivation of virtue." Confucius opened a school to teach students more than 2,000 years ago and imparted to society the Confucian ideals represented by the 5 cardinal virtues: benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and faithfulness. In the 1st century AD, Buddha Shakyamuni's teachings traveled east to China, with an emphasis on compassion and salvation of all beings. The Chinese culture became more wide-ranging and profound. Buddhism and Taoism established Chinese people's macroscopic understanding of the universe, life, and the human body. They are the part of Chinese culture that focused on leaving the mundane world. The influence of Buddhism and Taoism can be found to penetrate all aspects of people's lives. Chinese medicine, Qigong, Feng Shui, and divination are all rooted in Taoism. The well-known concepts of a heavenly kingdom and hell, the karmic rewards of good meeting with good and evil meeting with retribution, all of these came from Buddhism. Confucianism, on the other hand, is the part of traditional Chinese culture that focused on entering the mundane world. The profound influence of Taoism on Confucianism can be seen in such Confucian sayings as, "Aspire to the Tao, align with virtue, abide by benevolence, and immerse yourself in the arts." And, "If one hears the Tao in the morning, one can die without regret in the evening." As Confucius said, thus, if the people from afar are not compliant, bring them around by cultivating our culture and virtue. Then, the Communist Party came.
There's a lot of
Violence, always violence.
It wanted struggle and attempted to eradicate from people's minds.
We're back again, and
both
we're
the
back.
Tao.
That's good. We can come back. We've got a number of things we want to bring. and Charles is saying this. We've only got 4 minutes. And what you want to talk about is the nature of the communism, maybe 9 commentaries in the future of the operation of that country.
Yes, for the audience, you must, be very important to read the 9 commentaries. There's a website showing like.
You got the link, and the Epic Times, the
publishers,
and New Tang Dynasty Television are putting out pieces.
There's a website for that, 9commentaries.com. 9commentaries.com.
And I understand it's being widely read and it's being smuggled into China.
Exactly. A lot of people, in China.
So they're trying to undercut the Communist Party that's running that country,
but
in compliance with American capitalists.
But anyway, that's true.
Yeah, it is true.
Yeah,
that's
but
interesting.
There's another funny thing, or maybe not funny. It's like unfortunate thing is that the U.S. government rescued the Communist Party of China many times in history. So because the U.S. government has its rule of self-interest or whatever, or its ignorance, whatever it is. They in 1945, when the nationalists almost defeated the Communist Party, the General Marshall forced the nationalist government to stop. So then the Communist Party had time to develop its own force by the in the support by the Soviet Union.
Well, much of the world thought the Communist Party was the hope of the world against the imperialists.
Yeah, that's what
they say. And the bad guys in the world were the imperialists.
That's what they say,
Yeah, but much of the world thought that, and that was what the Cold War was about. In a large part, you had the imperialists by the communist view, and then Soviet Union fell, and China must be looking at the mess that developed in the Soviet Union, thinking they do not want to have anarchy develop or something. But you think the the whole of the Chinese Communist Party on that country is going to stop? It's going to implode like the Soviet Union, or what do you think?
Implode, that actually, because there are so many people quitting the Communist Party, and this trend will continue, will grow. So the Communist Party will become powerless, even though, for persecution.
Hard to imagine. They're so powerful now.
It is, it looks so powerful, but if you look at the history, if they want to persecute anybody, they can do that in like 3 days, or couple of months. They will succeed. But for the persecution of Falun Gong, they have been doing this for more than 8 years. They still not succeed, and they will never be successful.
And it's growing. And
you realize that.
That's amazing. The 9 commentaries saying something so geopolitically significant that power base may fall. There are a lot of, Marx used to say there are inherent contradictions in the capitalist system, and that there are many people in this country who think that what we're going through, even though this country is much better in lots of ways, but that the system that we have, that we impose on the world, a lot of the world doesn't like the United States now, and the system they're trying to impose on the world has inherent contradictions and will fall. The system that's in place running the world is not legitimate historically, and something new is going to come. And so that's another part of the broader dialectic that might apply. China's government might fall. The system running the West might fall.
I mean, that is
for not being in touch with the needs of the people and what the future requires.
But that's different.
It's different. I just thought I'd bring it up.
Yeah, but this country has been going on for like more than 200 years already.
Yeah,
but
it may fall.
Yeah, it may fall. But
China's been going on for 5,000. But
China, is not going to fall, but the communist regime is going to fall.
Okay.
So that's totally different. That's we have to.
Well, that's the same here. The regime, the politicals who run things now may fall, but the country will go on.
That's right.
But it will discover
people will go on.
Maybe.
So.
Sorry, we've run out of time, Charles. That's the problem. We didn't get enough. Thanks a lot for coming.
Thank you very much, Harry.
Sorry to get a chance to make your pleasure to have their perception. We invite you. We're coming back again tomorrow. We've got to do more, and you all should get a program.